everyone, and welcome to Writers Drinking Coffee. This is a podcast where writers sit around drinking tasty beverages to talk about writing, publishing, and the whole creative process. There will be rants and raves and opinions that may not agree but are lovingly delivered. We do not censor ourselves, so consider us PG-13. Today, your hosts include working genius and web spider Deirdre McGaffey-Schween and me, Jeannie Warner. This is episode 213, interview with K.M. Herkes. Welcome, K.M.
Hello, I'm happy to be here.
May I call you Karen for the ease of...
Yes.
I sometimes follow her initials when I say them too often together.
Yes, Karen is my legal name, and I am accustomed to answering to it, so let's go with that.
Delightful. And may I presume she or they?
Yes, those are my pronouns.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Well, Dee found you and tossed you to me and said, you've got to read this story collection. So I picked up a copy of Relics from a Traveling Show, and I just want to stay for nothing. I was floored. Well done, you. These are fantastic.
Well, thank you. There's a story behind the story collection, if you want to hear that.
I absolutely do, because this is,
okay.
For those of you that are thinking, having to look this up right away, there's fantasy, there's science fiction, there's contemporary literature. It is the most beautiful collection of hope punk I've read in a long time. How did you come to write it?
Apparently, hope punk is just my core foundational roots. It says these are Relics from a Traveling Show. I hate coming up with titles. This one actually came pretty easily because it's basically stories that have been written throughout my writing career. Some of those stories are 35 years old. A couple of them are only a year or two old. Some are published. Some were never found a home in an outside source, but I felt that they were good enough to see the world, so I put them in a Traveling Show and sent them out. But it started because my first published book was a novel, and then I wrote a couple more novels, and then I wrote a mosaic novel, and then I wrote a really big chunky novel. And all along that time, I kept saying, I don't write short fiction.
Wait. Your first published was a novel, not short story?
Yes, correct.
You're like backwards and awesome.
Yeah, I'm independently published, and a lot of that was that I came to publishing after almost 18 years in retail bookselling.
Wow.
Doing everything from special ordering from publishers in Ingram and Baker and Taylor to work in the cash office to HR to inventory control. And boy, let me tell you, pallet jacks are fun. But
oh no, we're not allowed to say that word.
I knew that my first novel was good, was really good. I know I'm supposed to be humble and say it's okay, but no, it was a darn good story. But it wasn't something that could be easily marketed because I'm looking at it with my bookseller hat on and going, yeah, if I was a publisher's marketing department, I would just be shrugging my shoulders and backing away slowly like Homer Simpson into the hedge. Because it's a mystery, thriller, adventure that's light on all of the action. There's the action. It's mostly a lot of people getting over their past trauma and collaborating to defeat their enemies through cooperation and communication. So that's not exactly the biggest elevator pitch ever. But anyway.
It's a heroine's journey, though, isn't it? I mean, when you think about it.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, absolutely. As soon as I read, that's Gail Carriger, right?
Among others, yes.
Among others, yeah. But she's the one I read who actually put it in like practical terms. And I'm like, oh, I sent your typical sci-fi thriller hero and I just dropped him into a heroine's journey. That's why it works so well for me.
Kate Elliott, there's other people that have all talked about the difference between the hero and the heroine and those. So, yeah.
Yeah. So as soon as I had published the first one and it was finding its audience and I was finishing the second one, and everyone in the science fiction community was like, oh, you should be in SFWA. You should write short stories so that you can get your chops, build your audience. And I'm like, oops, I did it backwards. I'm already published. Also, I don't do short stories. I tend to do things either super, super short. I mean, ask me to do a drabble and I can just churn out drabbles all day long because it's fun. Kind of like I don't do poetry a whole lot, but I like haiku. So I was like, okay, fine. And I put out a few stories and they were roundly rejected and they built up their little rejection piles, and that's fine. Even in this day and age, it is a slog to get through the short story, break into a short story market. And I didn't have very many stories to do that with. One, Up on the Roof, the first one, actually did get published in, I'm going to blank on the name of the Devilfish Review, which was a webzine, which was a really cool webzine. It just is no more, so I can't point people at the webzine for it.
But I like how you said you started that with a writing prompt.
Yes, that was a gargoyle, a banana, and a library. And I'm like, I can work with that. And it went off into the weeds very quickly, and I left it there because I really enjoyed it. But last year, I was remarking that I had a couple of stories for the next Mosaic novel in the Rollover File series, the one about the midlife crisis superpowers. But I didn't have enough to put a book out this year. And my friend said, oh, well, maybe you should put your short fiction out there. And I said, I don't really have enough short fiction to do that with. And then we went on to something else, and we were talking about the fact that I have a name twin in Australia who is also, or at least was at some point in time, active in science fiction fandom. So we looked her up on the Internet Science Fiction Database, which is a phenomenally cool resource. And so my friend Taya was looking at the page in there, and she said, well, what is this story? And I said, what are you talking about? She read off the title. The titles would all be familiar to you guys, YouTube, because, well, they're the ones that are in the book. Yeah. And I said, I don't know, because I didn't recognize it. So, now they're hyperlinked. So we looked at a few of them, and then after I started looking at a few, I'm like, yeah, that looks like my writing. It sure does. And that's my name on it. Yep, on a webzine. And again, it's one of the word strange and the word horizons and the word encounters are often used in webzine titles, and I'm blanking on which one is which. As you can tell, memory is not my strong suit.
Nouns are hard. I don't know about anybody else, but in the past 4 years in particular, so much stress, nouns are hard.
Nouns are hard. I should put that on a ribbon for my next convention. Nouns are hard.
Yes.
It turned out that I had an entire science fiction database page full of short fiction, and Taya looks at me, and Taya mostly reads anthologies. That's her thing. She does a reading blog called Mouse Reads Books. There's apparently more than one of those with that exact title. She reads almost a book a day and blogs about it on her blog, and she reads a lot of anthologies. So she's like, why don't you put out an anthology one? And I said immediately, bookseller, pedant that I am, collection.
I sort of was going to say that too, but I'm trying to be good.
Yeah,
an anthology is if the three of us sat down and wrote something as
right.
opposed to, yes.
Exactly. Yeah. So I immediately said collection. She said, whatever, just publish it so that I can read it. I said, fine, I will do that. And so that's why the dedication is for Taya. It's all your fault or something like that. I've forgotten exactly how I phrased it, but yeah, I was 12 stories that I had completely forgotten that I'd written. When I started looking at it, I'm like, oh, yeah, and those are the ones that are online. Let me start looking. Oh, yeah. Oh, that was a really good one. It just didn't find a home. Oh, that one got rejected 20 times. And I said, that's enough. I'm just going to tuck you into the folder. And apparently, with the way my brain deals with the trauma is, it didn't find a home. I'm just going to forget about it.
Right. You tucked it away both in your brain and in the folder, and it was gone.
Yep, just gone. So that's how it came to be.
Well, I love your magic schools. And I think for everybody that is avoiding the Rowling School of Magic, there are alternatives out there. Diane Duane wrote some, Alma Alexander wrote some, and you have magic schools, and they're engaging and they're interesting, and you have girls that have power just by being filled with spite, which, as Dee knows, is one of my private motivators in life.
Yes. Yeah, Me High to a Grasshopper was a ton of fun to write, just because, yeah, that was my teenage angst coming out. Although I wrote it when I was in my 40s, so maybe my middle-aged angst.
I will say that the starting line of that resonated so hard with me. I didn't start the fire. I'd like to make that clear right now.
They should put that on your tombstone, or I'm sorry, your cenotaph. Your cenotaph.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes. I didn't start the fire. I'd like to make that clear right away. Yes. She's a fun character. I don't see that going anywhere. Linnea, there's a whole lot of stories in that world. I just don't know if I'll ever get to them.
Well, we know they're in there, and that's beautiful. And I'm betting somewhere that if there was a publisher that gave you great flipping wads of cash, you might find them.
Oh, that would be a huge motivator. Yeah,
So
it's amazing.
I want to say for everybody out there, please be aware that this collection of short stories, I'm like 2/3 of the way through and I found no typos so far. And that is the first time I've ever read a book and been able to say that. Wow. Karen, you and just say the name of your editor out loud because this is a whispered, glorious human.
Let's see what she's going by. J.B. Garner.
Well done, you.
J.B. Garner. She's on Blue Sky under the literary worlds of J.B. Garner because she's also a very talented independent author and has several series and does not. Well, I mean, she edits in that she writes her own books, but then she actually is published by, I'm blanking on the name of the press. It's a really cool, Indigo? Let me see if I can.
Nouns are hard.
Nouns are hard. But anyway, yeah, she's very talented and did a fantastic job of catching so many.
I'm sure there were none, but amazing good.
Oh no, there were lots of them. I'm very fond of the word "ta," as we all are.
Well, ta, and I'm a the girl. And I also find that I overuse slightly, and I sometimes make myself do a word search on slightly to take it out because not everything can be slightly. I mean,
Yeah.
you laugh, but word patterns matter.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, they do. My kill list is a good 80, 90 words, and most of them are adverbs because I love them. And I'm not one of those people who believes that all the adverbs should go away.
Not all of them, no.
However, I should use ones other than the words technically. Yeah. And very.
Yeah.
I'm very fond of very.
I'm very
I
fond
will
of
say the creation of the editing programs, they're calling it a grammar error, but what they're saying is you used an adverb and that takes up extra space. I hate those with a passion because adjectives and adverbs bring sentences to life. If I'm writing a technical memo, sure, I can skip all of that. But people use editing software for lots of things. Stop telling me to take those out.
Oh, the first thing I always do is first thing I always did was turn off the quote unquote grammar check in Word.
Right.
Now I've just gotten rid of Word, and LibreOffice is great about not changing my words. Yeah, not doing that to me. And I have coworkers who are extremely prone to using Grammarly, and I can tell.
Yes. We've discussed Grammarly before on this podcast.
Yeah.
It is a tool, and every tool has an audience. I am not it, and I think a lot of people feel pressured to use them because it will make their work better. And that's no.
See, I don't know that it's that. I don't mind it when it finds them because it makes me look at things and decide. I also like hitting the fuck you button of like, nope, fuck you.
Yeah.
So it's to be aware of what you're doing and to do it deliberately rather than accidentally. That's what those checks are for me.
Yeah, it just, as I'm sure you've seen because you've been reading my stuff, I like the rhythm of a good compound sentence.
Yeah.
And all of the grammar and writing assistants hate compound sentences. You want to really just make their little artificial brains melt. You use a semicolon.
Now there's a whole religious war between the semicolon group and M- people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am firmly in the M- camp. However, there are times when it's the right thing to use.
It's there,
Yeah. For me, M- is a pause in my speech, while a semicolon is a writing tool. So
yes,
if I'm writing, dialogue, M- all the way. But if I'm making a list, checking it twice.
And I just want to remind everybody that ellipses means that there's words that are missing. So.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So don't put them at the end of the dialogue, meaning that they trailed off. Yeah.
I totally do that, but that's how I talk, so
Well, it's different. You're not writing a script for a movie in this case, although I could actually see many of your stories being movies.
Oh, absolutely.
I loved, and this was neither science fiction nor fantasy, the empathy you had for the animal control guy. I mean, clearly this is a big topic for you.
That is actually the story I have up right now because I wanted to talk about it.
Okay, cool. That is one that I wrote partly as an exercise for myself, which I have a feeling you might be asking me about, and then also because I was working at a pet store at the time,
Mm,
and one of my customers owned a suburban animal control outfit, so he let me do ride-alongs.
Oh,
Yeah.
fabulous.
Yeah, so that came out of that, but that's one that I believe, if I did it correctly, there should be no gender markers in that at all.
Well, she's
I
definitely a she.
have to read it again now, but
Yeah.
I like that it could have gone either way. And when I was a little girl, I thought I didn't like dogs because dogs just bit one. But
Oh,
when I became older, I discovered that what I loathe is dog owners.
Yeah.
So it's the human.
ah,
I have cats, and my cats are very well behaved and would never walk up and scratch you for no reason. So,
oh yeah, and usually, dogs usually have a reason, and then it's usually related to their owners, and yeah, that's so you were you could sympathize with the main character's
deeply,
feelings feelings about yeah.
deeply.
I was going to say the thing for me about this story is that I am not a noir detective kind of reader, and it reads very much in that genre.
It does.
And yet, normally if I pick up something like that, I'll read a couple of pages and be like, I'm moving on. I was absolutely drawn in, and it's so incredibly deep of a world considering it's, 20 pages? It's not very long. And yet that was one
No,
of the
yeah.
ones I'm like, so is there a book attached to this one?
Nope, that was it. And I just realized that I have actually two animal control stories.
You do.
Animal control officer stories. The one that's in first person is the one, or actually, now they really, never mind. They're both in first person.
They're both in first
The
person.
I'm talking about the catch.
Yes, the catch. Yeah, the catch was definitely that was my target. There was I wanted to write a noir story. That one was based off an actual movement, I guess. There was a lot of talk in the suburbs where I live about radically restricting pet ownership.
Hmm.
So I decided to do the classic science fiction writing trick of, well, let's just take that and push it up to 11 and see what happens. And I ended up with a fun Jessica Rabbit kind of story.
It is. And it's sort
Yeah.
of I liked them both, but I almost think I liked the second one better because it was a little bit more when you got to discuss the crazy cat lady, only you punched that up to 13 too. And I love,
Yeah, yeah.
Right,
So
dog catcher.
yeah.
Now I'm
yeah,
remembering the second one.
yep. Yeah, and you can see how clever I am about titles. That they probably were both working titles. Were probably both dog catcher, and then I had to change one of them. So can't have two stories about the same topic with the same title.
Well, what exercise did you do for yourself to get the Philip Marlowe dog catcher story together?
The style that's just coming from I read, read, haven't stopped. Um, the first books I read other than kids classics were all of my mom's Agatha Christie and all of my dad's Philip Marlowe and Elmore Leonard, and then was raised watching all of the actual noir movies. So that's just something I'm deeply steeped in, and I like some every once in a while. It's just a fun style to go play in.
Yeah.
So
I loved Rex
yeah.
Stout my own self, except for oddly, when somebody else took him over, I actually started liking him better.
That happens.
When was it? I want to say Robert
Parker.
Goldsboro? Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, wherever you are, Robert, if you're alive, I keep forgetting nouns are hard.
Nouns are hard. Nouns are hard. Names are worse. So yeah, and another one that I was actually working my way through at the time those were written was Philip MacDonald. All of his books have colors in the title, like the deep turquoise sea and it was kind of noir, but Florida noir. And Carl Hyacin.
I could see Florida noir. There's one of the problems that I had with a lot of the noir is, well, one, the utter lack of motivation from the people in it, and two, that they were not descriptive enough. I mean, we walked up to the old brownstone building and in through the thing. Like, that's not really that doesn't engage my senses the way that, Agatha was
Right,
better at
right,
it.
right. And that's that's why I think I liked the Travis McGee books by John D. McDonald. That's who it was, because they were kind of noir, but there was a lot more description. But it was all that short, almost staccato description. Everything was very in your face and honed down to almost telegrams in the
Right.
description, but they were visual enough that it would keep me.
Now, I had a question about the Mary Ellen Unity sponsor. Is that where your midlife superpower crisis, the rollover files, was that out of that series somewhat?
Yes,
Okay.
that's Homecoming, I believe.
Yes, I remember.
And yes, and I call that's one of the main characters in, well, both Rollover and in Sharp Edge of Yesterday is Jack Kobe, who came into his power about 35, 40 years too early, which means it's a death sentence and he's going to die very young. And I always knew he had an adoptive mother. So I decided to just write the story of how they met. But it didn't end up being characters being what they are. Jack had absolutely no interest in cooperating with me telling his story. So I told Mary Ellen's story instead. And I love Mary Ellen to pieces because she is
Mm-hmm.
a feisty woman. And that's the kind of person you would have to be raising a 14-year-old who's about to be drafted, basically.
Shipped off as a living weapon.
Yeah, so
Yes.
shipped off to the real reason that they're put into the Marines is that that's the place to learn to be safely destructive.
Navy and
Like,
Marines are a really good mom, you know.
so
Sent my niece
um
off to the Navy because she needed a couple extra years of a mom.
of the institutional mom, yeah. I have a lot of friends who were in other branches of the military, and they're like, "Why did you pick the Marines?" I'm like, "Well, reason number one, one of my closest friends he died in 2018. He was a Marine, so I had him on hand, and he really wanted this storyline to take off. So those were the ones I used. And he was my military advisor. I don't write military fiction, but I think because I have friends who are retired military, then it's part of my world, so it's part of my writing.
I would suck up to Elizabeth Moon. I think she was Marine Corps.
Yes, I believe she wrote the Deed of Pascunarian while she
Yep.
was on active duty. So, yeah, I heard from someone who knew folks at band that that was one of the very few times when someone plonked down the 50 bazillion page manuscript on the editor's desk and the editor said, "I want it."
Yeah.
Because yeah, it was published separately, but the whole first three were finished
Nice.
before it even started. But with these, yeah, they picked the Marines because it all started in the middle of World War II. And at the time, the Posse Comitatus Act meant that the only people that could be activated to serve on U.S. soil were either the National Guard, and they were busy, and then they had a lot of Marine units that had not been called up yet. So I did immense amounts of research that I will never inflict on a reader to figure out what unit I could pull and turn into Mercury Battalion.
But isn't
And then
that
I,
kind of the fun of, I mean,
oh,
you have the
so much
advantage of you
fun.
work in the library anyway, so, and some of us are kind of jealous of just
Yeah.
sitting there being able to read all. But the rat
Oh,
holes that you get to go down of like, okay, I needed this and where and what year
oh
did that
yes.
happen? And
Yes, I have experts on hand, and I do ask them the most amazing, wild questions. And I also have a lot of experience doing the research myself from my own background. So, yeah, and it is absolutely that is so much fun. I've just embarked on making a series Bible, I guess it's called. Basically, putting in one document all of the things: the character name, description, age when they first show up, and what's important for the rollover series is putting all of the things that I mention and toss off as being world events or things that are going on into a timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Because now that I am in the middle of book three, I'm realizing I can't keep it all in my head anymore. I really could through the second book, but at this point I'm like, no, it's going to get complicated really fast with 5-year breaks between each book. So I, at this point, really need to do this. So I have just spent the last couple of weeks just doing a deep dive into all the things I get to change in history.
I have a kind of a question in terms of, did you use a tool for this? Is this just yet another Open Libra or LibreOffice page, or do you use something to keep your files organized, OneNotes? What are the tools of your trade?
Oh gosh, I admire people who are organized so much. What I've
They're
been using up
amazing.
to this point is I at least have them all in one folder, but it's just a whole bunch of different. Oh, I started something in this spreadsheet here, and I started a Word doc over there, and then here's 15 other Word docs with different lists in them. I've at least got them all in one folder, and now I'm putting it all into one great big workbook. So it has tabs that are, one tab is the events timeline, one tab is the character ages at different events timeline, how old they are, what school year it was,
When that big event
and
happened, he was in third grade, which means I can't have it happen when he's in fifth grade because he was
yes,
already, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and working on that made me realize I needed to actually go through and work out okay, so what year in the 1960s did the Pope roll into a superpower and completely change the history of the Catholic Church? Okay, when did we decide to go to the moon? Because it would have been in the 50s because we had teleporters. Yeah, that kind of a
And
thing.
other minor changes to historic.
Other, yeah, oh yeah, but it's it's not a rabbit hole. It's more like it's like crossing the ocean by hopping on the back of different sea turtles and hoping that they show up when I get there because I'm like, oh yeah, now I need to think about this. Oh, I forgot about Eastern Europe. And my husband, he didn't accuse me, but he knows me, and he asked me out of curiosity if I had walled off China just so I wouldn't have to deal with it. And I'm
Talk
like,
about a deep history to play in.
No, no, no. You
yes,
just took The
yeah.
Unconquerable Sun at Kate's Eliot books as those are the canon for what China and the Indonesian Empire was doing over there. They just explored in a different direction. That's all.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I'm like, no, yeah. And I did that because it's like, no, that's not why I did it. That was just a huge relief to me as a writer. That the thing that made sense logically in terms of geopolitics and in 1945, if there had been,
Oh, see, now I'm waiting for Marvel to kind of go down because your midlife crisis superpowers. I'm just imagining if it was already a mutant, how would they change? Like
oh,
Sue Storm with hot flashes is now going to throw lava from her fingertips.
yeah,
And Johnny
yeah.
Flame is not so hot as he was when he was 20. And so now he's discovered that he keeps turning invisible sometimes, and it's really disconcerting for him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I had someone query whether that series whether that really shouldn't be in science fiction because it's not and I said, well, everyone in the stories treats it as science because it started in the 1940s when what the US did and what most countries did was, oh, let's throw science at it and then create a huge bureaucracy. It's just what you did.
Yeah.
That's how you dealt with major events. But it's not scientific. I mean, I have characters who can eat iron rebar and produce energy out of it. They they teleport. It's not science, but no one can cope with that in that world. So they science it.
There are so many different definitions of what breaks fantasy from science fiction.
Yeah.
And I've always
Yeah.
been a fan of if the characters in the book or some characters in the book understand how it works, that's science fiction. Even if I don't. But in this one, yeah, they still have, there's a lot of science going on, but there's a lot of, yeah, and we don't know why that works.
Yeah, well, but they do what science is very prone to doing. Well, we don't know why this works, so we're going to just have a constant that we put
Hmm.
in there. That makes the math work.
Yes.
Oh, I'm now
So,
starting to think about here. I'm a float on a new idea that just popped into my head. Fantasy is agnostic and science is gnostic because it can be known. Gnostic faiths were one that
Sure.
could be known, you
yep, yep.
study and get to there, whereas agnosticism, which, sorry, Catholics used to be considered an agnostic faith, is it cannot be known. It's ineffable. That's much more
Hmm.
fantasy.
Yep, yep. and at least the author knows that the powers that happen in this world, they are ineffable. They're not, until you start getting into dimensional math and science, which they're not, and we're not. We haven't mastered that yet. We haven't mastered that yet. So until then, it will at least be at best Arthur C. Clarke science.
There's so much interesting, there's so much to be known. And in a way, there's part of me that is glorying in every disaster, because with every disaster, there comes opportunity. And, I am not the biggest generative pre-transformation girl, fan, nor of the image manipulation, but I super love that they're using it to fold proteins and find faster cures, and that's cool.
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
we could. I have opinions about artificial intelligence. Yes, so many. The first one being that we need to find better names for it. I mean, we speak English. English is the language for coming up with wild and crazy names. We need better names for this because artificial intelligence is neither really fully artificial and it's definitely not intelligent.
Hmm.
Um, so, large learning models, that was definitely an engineer obviously came up with that.
I mean,
Um,
personally, I use plagiarism as a service, but I understand
But that's but
that might
that's
not work.
specific to generative pre-GPT. So that's not, you know,
yeah,
we can get into a
yeah.
whole argument that there's everybody who says that machine learning is technically AI, but really it's just a
No.
bunch of if
It's
then
no,
else's
yeah,
in
it's
a trench coat.
it,
And then we're
yes,
back to
yes,
everything being called an algorithm.
Yeah.
yes. So yes, everything is an algorithm when in doubt, which is, it's right up there with let's run a fourth level diagnostic and reverse the polarity.
Reverse the polarity.
Well, what if we flew really fast at this planet and then
But that
just
works.
just missed it?
Until we just miss it, and then we'll go into a wormhole. I'm doing a rewatch of Farscape right now,
Oh,
and
excellent.
I
Me
had
too.
forgotten how thoroughly unhinged that series was. Uh,
I like that everywhere
just
people keep forgetting that he was just a scientist, man, who got the good luck to. He wasn't like any trained military pilot, actually. He was just the guy who crunched the numbers and said, "Well, I built it, so I want to fly it." He's
yeah, and then ended up through a wormhole into another part of space, and yeah, they absolutely they jazz hands so hard with the science that it's just they just wanted to have fun, and they did, and
And they did.
so
yeah,
that
and
so
that can be okay. I mean, there's not every science fiction has to be grounded in sound physics or even
oh no.
ideas of physics. So, I mean, I'm okay with other things.
Oh yeah,
Throw the word
it
quantum in
is
it, and then you
pure.
don't know, right?
Yes, exactly. Right up there with algorithm. It's a quantum algorithm. As long as you have quantum algorithms, then you can go through your wormholes into other parts
You
of
can do whatever
galaxies
you
far, far
want with a
away.
quantum.
As long as you have the quantum algorithm.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's oh yeah.
Exactly. So,
I love space opera. I love space opera. I don't have a space opera to write, but it's fun to read and it's definitely fun to watch. So
so has Relics from a traveling show inspired you to write any other short stories of late? Or where are you going
I
next?
am working, yes, I am. Well, right, where am I going next? I am working on the book that will come after Sharp Edge of Yesterday, which will be another Mosaic novel. So the story that's second to last in Relics, which is Campfire,
Hmm.
which is about a Department of Public Safety outpost. It's one of those, it's full of the secrets that nobody talks about that will never stay hidden forever. That will probably be well, not probably. See, there I go with the adverbs. It will be part of the mosaic that I'm building, and I'm working on the story that will start the mosaic novel, which is about Izzy, who's also in the story Lockdown. See, all of my stories kind of weave into each other. So characters from Rough Passages, Elena had a whole novel. Izzy may end up having a whole novel, but she needs to get her life together, and so she's currently an early onset 20 something who's very angry at life because she's early onset, which means she is going to die early, but she has a completely useless power. She thinks it's completely useless because she's 20 and she's bitter. I immediately thought of like 15 really cool things I could do with it, and everybody I tell what the power is, they're like, "Oh, but you could do this or this or this." I'm like, "You could." She's just really angry and doesn't want to deal with it.
It's hard to
And
be
she's going,
20. I mean,
yeah, it's hard, especially when you've been given a, well, you're not going to have that many more years, so what are you going to do? She's living
Make
in
the best of
government
it.
subsidized housing. Yep, right now she's living in government subsidized housing with a whole bunch of retired people who have superpowers, but are not the kind who it changed their life for the better. And she's about to meet her. It's about her meeting her neighbor, Natalie, who is a retired librarian who has the power, the very annoying power, as far as she's concerned, of being able to know that that thing should be with that person.
that's actually quite cool.
That person needs that other person. That person. So she would just come across a plant at the grocery store and know that she needs to buy that plant. She won't know why, but she knows she needs to buy the plant and take it home. And then, a day, a week, a month later, someone will show up and she'll realize, oh, excuse me, this cactus is for you.
I happen to have your plant.
I happen to have your plant, by the
I
way.
think that's an awesome superpower, and I think I have people that in my life that may have that power. Well done, them.
Yeah. So well done them. Well done them. So anyway, so that's that's the story I'm currently working on. And I have another one that's in development, but the characters are not cooperating because they're teenage girls who are getting over the trauma of the loss of their mother, and they mostly just want to sit and argue with each other. So getting them to
Well,
do their plot.
I wanted to bring a thank you about it though, because you have different protagonists. You've got kids, you've got 20 something gals, you have middle-aged cranky women who need more coffee. You have all of these have stories to be told, and you remind us of that through all of this. And I really actually appreciated and liked that because I'm tired of magic teenagers. I like 40 something women going out and having adventures. I like
Well,
60 something women having adventures.
so do I. I mean, the inspiration for the rollover stories was literally standing in the line at the grocery store, having hot flashes, looking at the latest, People magazine with the latest Marvel teenagers on the front of it,
Yeah.
and thinking, you know, if I suddenly developed a superpower today, what would that be like? And that was combined with reading a Tumblr post, probably right around the same time, that was all about I really want to see the mentor be the cranky grandma.
Hmm.
I like it.
Uh,
Any
so,
advice to new writers?
advice to new writers: keep writing, find your way. Writing advice is, I have opinions on writing advice. Whatever writing advice, whatever writing advice works for you, go with that, and ignore all the rest of it, hard as it is. I am a minority report when it comes to almost all writing practice things. So,
No,
like,
no. I like
never,
it. There's way
ne-
too many
yeah,
people profiting about the insecurity of other people of this is
yeah,
how you should write.
yeah,
So
yeah.
well done.
I am very glad that I did not start writing. Very glad that I did not discover the online writing community until I had already had, okay, technically 4 novels under my belt, but 2 of them will never be seen by other human beings, not even my husband.
Where do you
So,
live? No reason.
nope,
Chicago. Did I read
yeah.
Chicago?
Chicago, outside Chicago. Yeah, but I'm very glad because I immediately was overcome with, oh, I'm doing this all wrong. And then people are like, no, your books are good. I'm like,
Right.
okay.
This is sort of an end result industry. If you manage to write, you are following the right writing advice.
Yes, and that's my advice to new writers. If you're writing and you're insecure about it, you're probably doing it right.
Excellent. Well, we will put links to the fascinating things we discussed during this episode on our website, which is www.writersdrinkingcoffee.com. Karen, this has been fabulous, and you have to come to conventions so that you can sit with me and Dee, and we're going to bark on it.
I love that idea. My next convention is MiniCon in Minneapolis. So, but apparently we have 3 time zones, so I'm going to have to like expand
I've
out
got a
of the
niece in
Midwest.
Minneapolis. I'm down. I've
There we
heard that it
go.
has the most amazing people and the crappiest weather on the planet. So,
The weather is not as bad as it's rumored. I think it's kind of like Seattle saying Seattle has horrible weather. They just only they have horrible weather for 10 weeks a year, and it keeps other
no,
people
it's
out.
kind of from October 20th to July 6th, precisely.
Yeah.
And Dee, thank you
I
very much for finding us, Karen. You've
You're
been,
yeah,
very welcome. Mastodon is a lovely place.
I love Mastodon so much, right?
well, send me all of your links and your website, and we will line it up there onto this episode.
All
Thank you,
right.
Karen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed this.
Our delight. You've been listening
Absolutely.
to Writers Drinking Coffee, a labor of love and enthusiasm put together by the hosts. Our main web magic is cast by Deirdre Schween, and our sound engineer and backup web spiders are David Welsh, John Schmidt, and Ksenia Chernyivskaya. Our intro and exit music are performed by Michael Engberg, who lives down under in Hervey Bay and runs Tin Can Music School. Our podcast sponsors are Jackal Designs, The Bean Scene, Arm Street, and every single library on the planet, which is where you can still find all the glorious books in the world. And hey, thanks for listening.